At the weekend, myself as well as a lucky couple of hundred or so Doctor Who fans got a sneak preview of the Underwater Menace animation, as well as a Q&A with the team that made it. Stay tuned until the end of the video to hear some exciting missing episode animation news we gleaned from the event, or just skip there if you couldn't give a toss about my ponderous witterings on the quality of the animation. Just over a year ago, The Abominable Snowman received an animation which was rumoured to be the last Doctor Who animation, but much to people's delight, it was announced a few months ago that another animation was coming out this year. Excitement which was muted when the animation in question was the Underwater Menace. The Underwater Menace has never been a particularly popular story. Its bizarre campness, lack of depth in either world building or characters, and very poor production values had long had it near the bottom of story ranking lists. The 2015 DVD release certainly did the story no favours in its public perception. The more recently found episode 2 was far weaker than anything previously existing in episode 3 in terms of any fun or quality, and the reconstruction of episode 1 and 4 were laughably awful. However, given its campness and lack of decent reconstruction, could an animation possibly help this story? The answer is yes and no. No, because no matter the quality of the animation, you can't polish a turd. However, you can play to a turd's strengths, such as using its fertiliser. And what I mean by this is the animation makes it more fun. This animation continues with the trend of animations not being afraid to take creative liberties, not only to translate what works in live action to what works in animation, but also to realise the ambitions of the story, which couldn't be achieved on the shoelaces and buttons handed to the production team for this particular story. For example, the sets are now giant, but in a way that stays true to the story. This is in contrast to the Fury from the Deep animation, where they made the base and its rooms completely huge, which removed the claustrophobic atmosphere that made the original story work. Here, the rooms are grand to fit in with the ancient Mediterranean theme, with large temples, giant idols, and labyrinthian corridors. I can see a little more of the potential of a story set in Atlantis now. Pretty much every costume has been given a fresh lick of paint too, with a variety of bright colours and zany outfits which help in carrying the story a little bit better as a fun bit of fluff. The Atlanteans are also greatly differentiated with a different skin colour to match the amount of time their people have been living underwater. I do particularly want to compliment the movement in this animation. We've come a long way with this style since the clumsiness of the original release of Power of the Daleks, and aside from the odd janky moment, things looked smooth. The character models are also an improvement. This is definitely the closest they've ever got Ben to looking like Ben, other than the excellent Moonbase animation. Although I do think the Doctor's face is a little bit of a downgrade on how it was in Evil of the Daleks, the last animation this studio did. Plus Jamie still looks middle-aged. Not all the changes made I think are positive, however. The Zaroff Guard's outfits are too camp even for the likes of this story. They look like something which only belongs in those modern children's animations that have zero effort put into them and no one will remember in 5 years. There was also a big change with the fish people, who don't at all look like the really good costumes that some of the actors got to wear and are the most iconic part of the story in the original broadcast. Obviously it's a good job they haven't put in the women who were evidently just wearing snorkelers and bathing suits, but a bit of the magic is lost with these new designs for me. Also in regards to the fish people, they removed the almost mesmerising scene where the fish people swim majestically around, freed from their bondage, and replaced it with what I can only describe as a fish person doing a revolutionary interpretive dance. To be fair though, the original scene was probably too complicated to achieve in this animation on this budget, and every other time I watch this story I watch it with the surviving episodes anyway, so it's not something I find particularly concerning. Overall, the Underwater Menace animation is a very successful one, and yet another really positive animation done by this team. Anne-Marie Walsh deserves a lot of credit as this belongs with her other 2 directed animations, those being the Faceless Ones and the Evil of the Daleks, as being among the top 3 post-2014 animations. I'd recommend getting it for your DVD shelf if for no other reason than it makes episodes 1 and 4 bearable, which certainly wasn't the case in the original DVD release, although I still wouldn't necessarily call this a good Doctor Who story. But it was the most fun I've ever had watching the Underwater Menace, so for what it's worth, that was the case. However, as mentioned earlier, there was a bit of missing episode animation news revealed during the Q&A after the screening, the most exciting of which is that there's at least one animation currently being worked on. While they didn't specify and tell us which one it was, we can make an educated guess, and I've narrowed it down to 2. The first possibility is the Smugglers. It was the Daily Mirror who had the scoop on the missing episodes not being over after months of rumours about their end, and they were correct in naming the Underwater Menace as one of the animations in production. Given how much of a surprise it was to the Doctor Who community, I think we can rule out this just being a lucky guess, so they probably do have a decent source. In that same article, they go on to claim that The Smugglers was also an animation in production, and with all that they've predicted in this article so far coming true, it wouldn't be much of a surprise if this was too. The second option is the Celestial Toymaker. There's been a few rumours about this one, and Peter Purves even let slip at a convention that the Celestial Toymaker animation isn't something he was supposed to talk about. Could it be this one? Could both be being made? Given that both stories are only 4 parts with a limited cast, they would be ideal choices for a relatively cheap animation. In any case, we'll have to wait and see. Another interesting fact regarding the animations is the source of the funding. It was confirmed at the event by the producer of this animation that BBC America had ceased to fund the projects, which was the rumour last year that sparked the panic that the animations were over. This production was funded instead by BBC Studios, the commercial arm of the BBC. He also clarified that the animations are commissioned one at a time, and that the animators are justified on a profit basis. So in other words, we will need to support the animations through buying the DVDs to keep them coming, which I for one will be. Anne-Marie Walsh, the director, was also asked which animation she'd most like to make out of the Doctor Who episodes, and her answer was the Daleks master plan. Now before you get too excited, she did stipulate that this was on the condition of a massive budget and 5 years in which to make it. As much as we all want DMP, if it ever happens, it will most likely be the last one we get. Thus ends this video. I highly recommend a trip to the BFI when the Doctor Who is on. The screenings always have great extras, and the company in the bar afterwards is always fantastic. If you do come and see me there, feel free to come for a chat. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back next time in another video. Catch you a lot later.